Picture yourself wandering through a bustling 18th or 19th century English market. The aroma of freshly baked bread mingles with the lively chatter of haggling voices and the sounds of animals being guided along muddy streets. Yet amid this chaos, something entirely unexpected catches your eye. A woman standing still with a ribbon tied around her neck, her hand grasped not by a lover but by a merchant, her own husband, and she is not buying goods but being sold herself. This scenario might sound fictional, but it was a genuine, though unofficial, custom that occurred throughout Britain from the late 17th century well into the 20th century. In a society where divorce was nearly unattainable for most, selling a wife became a peculiar, theatrical, and symbolic method for working-class pairs to end their marriages. Although deeply shocking to modern sensibilities, this practice did not emerge as a form of legal procedure or malicious treatment. Instead, it arose as a way to cope with the limitations and costs involved in formal separation. At a time when women possessed very few rights, and marriage meant surrendering all property and independence to the husband, breaking a marriage bond proved far more challenging than forming one. For the majority, divorce was an impossible dream, hindered by expensive fees, complex legalities, and social condemnation. It demanded either an individual act of Parliament, a church-sanctioned separation without permission to remarry, or drawn-out legal disputes, none of which were accessible to the typical working man or woman. In countless instances, one option stood out as the only viable escape. Sometimes couples simply desired to separate, but lacked a legal way to do so, which led to the unusual yet public practice of wife-selling. The earliest documented instance occurred in 1692, when a man named John Whitman sold his wife to another man called Mr. Brad Garrison. Although no detailed records describe how this transaction took place, it marked the start of a social custom that quietly persisted for more than 200 years, despite never being officially lawful. This practice existed in a peculiar zone of tolerated illegality, seen more as a ritual than a genuine sale. The procedure followed certain formal steps. Notices were occasionally displayed in the community, announcing an upcoming sale. On the day itself, the woman would be dressed and paraded through the town, typically with a halter or a ribbon around her neck or waist, serving as a symbol rather than a restraint. She would then be taken to a public location, such as a marketplace, a tavern courtyard, or even the steps of a courthouse. There, she would be tied to a post and presented for sale. The person who placed the highest bid, often her new partner, would then take her away. What may appear to be a harsh spectacle was, in many situations, a consensual arrangement between the spouses. Numerous sales were neither forced nor violent, but rather allowed both individuals to continue their lives within a society offering limited options. Some women made sure to select the buyer themselves and, in rare circumstances, refused the man who proposed the highest offer. In certain cases, the wife was already. Coexisting with the buyer prior to the sale was not uncommon. One particular sale took place in the year 1824, where the woman did not approve of the first successful bidder and insisted on being auctioned once more. A lower offer was accepted, accompanied by a quart of ale provided it came from someone she preferred. This reveals the unusual mix of spectacle and practicality in these transactions, as not all women were passive bystanders. Some were fully conscious, entirely consenting, and in a few instances even the instigators. These public auctions carried a more profound meaning than many might think. In a society where appearances and reputation held great value, staging a sale became a public announcement that the marriage had ended. The relationship was finished, and any future responsibilities, including debts or support, ceased to concern the original husband. By leading the woman with a ribbon or halter, both parties openly indicated to their community that their legal and social bond was over. Some instances of wife-selling were surprisingly organized. In January of 1815, a man named Jack Osborne sold his wife and child for £1 inside a tavern because there was no market available that day. Later that same year, a woman was brought to Smithfield Market and sold for 50 guineas and a horse. She left with her new partner in a carriage without a trace of hesitation. These events attracted crowds not only due to their rarity, but also because of the spectacle they created. On one occasion, a sale had to be delayed because the crowd was so immense that it disturbed the market itself. Sales often appeared polite and even cooperative, while others were driven by envy or frustration. In 1804, a shop owner in London caught his wife with another man. The encounter did not escalate into violence. Instead, the man proposed to purchase her, and the shop owner accepted the offer. The matter was resolved immediately, not through lengthy legal disputes or scandalous rumors, but as a quick final deal. Nevertheless, not every woman consented to such agreements. For instance, in 1766, a carpenter in Swauk sold his wife during a drunken episode at a tavern. There is no evidence that she agreed to this. The next day he regretted his actions and begged her to return, but she declined. Devastated by shame and sorrow, he later ended his own life. This tragic aspect of the practice reminds us that behind the public events, there were real individuals facing genuine emotions and consequences. Although unofficial wife sales were often accepted as valid conclusions of marriage, especially by local communities, former husbands would openly announce their separation from their wives. In Ipswich in 1789, a man posted a notice warning people not to extend credit to his wife under his name, explaining that she was no longer his responsibility. Though such statements held no legal authority, they were socially acknowledged. Inns and public houses became common locations for these transactions, particularly in Sussex, where these places were known hubs. Payments were frequently made not only with money, but also with drinks. For example, in 1898, a wife was sold for 7 shillings and a quart of beer. Earlier incidents followed similar patterns of exchange reflecting the customs of the time. In Brighton, another man accepted 8 pots of beer in the year 1790. At that time, a man traded his wife for half a pint of gin only to regret it later and repurchase her. Despite occasional acceptance, many individuals found this custom shocking. In 1797, a journalist from the Times saw such a sale and described it as a shameful act of the lower classes. Judges and officials started to voice their concerns publicly. In one case in 1806, the police had to shield the husband from an angry crowd who were furious about his effort to sell his wife. Although the practice continued for some time, society's view began to shift. By the 1830s, wife sales became less common. Growing awareness of women's rights along with changes in family law helped alter public opinion. The Matrimonial Causes Act of 1857 made divorce more available to the middle class. At last, there existed a legal and recognized method to end a marriage without resorting to markets or pubs. Yet this strange tradition still quietly persisted in rural communities. The last known wife sale in England happened in 1913 when a woman declared in court that her husband had sold her for a single pound to a co-worker. It was no longer a public spectacle, but a secret agreement, a fading custom. The story of wife selling may seem bizarre or even ridiculous today, but it reveals meaningful insights into class struggles, gender roles, and desperation in the Victorian era. It highlights how those caught by poverty and social pressures sought extreme solutions in a world that offered few options. An inaccessible justice system left the public searching for answers. This event presented something that official courts and authorities were unable to provide. It brought a sense of resolution, self-governance, and an unusual kind of honor. Beneath the decorations and drinking vessels were narratives of individuals striving, through their unique methods, to regain authority in a society that supplied them with limited options.